Today I'm going to show you guys how to take this regular static mesh tree and convert it to the full procedural vegetation workflow. And while I am going to be using one as a base, is just to show you what you can absolutely create from scratch, and I'll show you a little bit of that as well. This is just to kind of get you started, get you familiar with the procedural vegetation system, since big improvements in 5.8. And while this is a basics video, this is still a preview of 5.8 as I'm recording this. So there will be bugs, and I will point them out to hopefully have you avoid a lot of the crashing or whatnot. And I'm sure some things will change upon full release. But the general idea of it and the general probably even nodes will most likely all still work the same on full release. And I'll make a follow-up tutorial as needed if things change and this is no longer up to date. So with that, let's get into it. By default, when you load in 5.8, you will need to go into Edit Plugins, search for Vegetation, and make sure you turn on the Procedural Vegetation Editor. It is off by default. Go ahead and turn it on and restart your engine if needed. What I have here is a simple, just regular tree, and this is one that I actually picked up right here from Polyhaven. Just a regular tree small 02 in this case. You can see same tree, and just grabbed it from here. It comes with a bunch of stuff, but I don't really need anything. I just need to get the tree in because I like this tree as the base. Mostly, I really cared about one thing, which is the leaves. Because as you'll see in a moment, really the only things we're going to be keeping from this tree is the general base shape of it and just kind of the very basic of it, and then also the leaves. So how do we now use this? How do we make this tree not only have all those leaves, but have all the control? Well, if we go to our content browser, we can just go ahead and right click. And if we go all the way up here to foliage, you'll see here procedural vegetation. Now, I don't know why it's under foliage procedural vegetation when it is procedural. So I feel like it would be here, but nevertheless, under foliage, procedural vegetation, go ahead and select it. And you get the option of creating one of the presets. We're actually going to create a brand new one, create new procedural vegetation. We're going to start from scratch so you can get an idea of the basics of it. I'm just going to call it PVG for procedural vegetation graph _ basic tree. And then we'll open it up. And if you ever used PCG, some of the stuff will look familiar. Unfortunately, though, that's pretty much where the resemblance ends. The nodes are completely different. How it works is pretty much completely different. The UI is different. The only thing that really is the same is how this looks. And it has an input and output. That's the same, right? The detail panels here compared to on the right. Same thing with the graph parameters. Those are down here. We have a nice large preview on the left. So things are a little bit different in this layout, but that's okay. There are some nice things here. So let's get started with getting our base tree in. So to do that, I'm going to right click. I'm going to search import. And here you'll see a static mesh importer. That is one of the new 5.8 things. We can just bring in the tree that we were using. So in the static mesh asset, I can just plug in the tree just right here. And now it has also materials to keep. Now this is important. By default, I had none selected. And basically, what part of materials here are we actually going to be using for the tree? Well, I definitely want to use the trunk, and I probably want to use the branches as well. Let's go ahead and both of those selected. And if we give it a moment, you will see that there we go. Hey, there's our tree. And you can see here, this is where it thinks the branches are. Now, it's not completely accurate, as you can see here, right? That is not quite right. It's not perfect. But you can see here, there's the little tree here. Okay, so that's a good start. Now, if you want to now already preview what it would look like if this was all a tree, you can just drag out of here and do a mesh builder. And immediately in this scenario, and why I want to use this tree is one, it doesn't have the most perfect setup. And I want to show what it would take to fix this and make it usable. So why is this happening? Why do we have such a thick section here, and what is going on? I couldn't tell you if I tried. I don't know what logic it's using, but something makes it think maybe it's a trunk, but it's weird because clearly this is thicker going to thinner, so maybe it's thinking this is a trunk, but this is also a trunk. I don't know what's going on here, genuinely. But I want to show you on this tree to show that, hey, this can happen at the very least right now, and probably in like 5.9, 5.10, we'll get a better result for this, just for like any mesh. But on this one, right, this happens. So what do we do? Well, there's a few things we can do. We can edit the actual skeleton here before this happens. And by the way, this mesh builder, as you see, rebuilds the entire tree. You unfortunately cannot use the original tree as the mesh itself. Now, technically, nothing is stopping you from creating mini trees of just branches and populating them on a tree with something like PCG. And I might show you that next time if you guys are interested. Let me know in the comments below. But if you were to do the full tree itself, then here we are for now. So let's go ahead and figure out how to fix this. Well, after the static mesh importer, we can use another node called skeleton edit. Skeleton edit, just like its name, allows you to edit the skeleton. Now, one nice thing is you might notice is as I am kind of selecting a node, it will automatically display that in the viewport. I don't press anything here. I'm just selecting. And honestly, that is really handy. Although sometimes I wish I could just sample one and continue looking at it as I modify something else, but that's okay. But this skeleton edit has a few things. It has the skeleton edit mode down here, TRS, and branch removal. What does TRS stand for? That's really something. I don't know. Not a clue. It allows me to select branches. Okay, look, I'm not gonna stand here and pretend like I know what TRS stands for. I have no clue. Why is it called TRS instead of like selector? I don't know. I'm a simple person. I now know that TRS in my case is for selecting and branch removal is for removing branches. What I can do with TRS is I can just go in here and I can just click on any of these points and I can move them. Simple as that. And only thing is to note is, yes, you can undo, as you saw. I can move this here and I can press Control Z, but the actual widget doesn't move back here to select it. So it allows me to do that. I can also change how it's selecting it. I can do a selection fall off. I can increase the number of point selections. So I can select 2 and now it selects a little bit more. And you can see there's now a fall off here. So you can modify these branches. Now from here, if there's any issues. Now, the main thing is, in our case, right, we have these weird thick ones and there's some other issues. So what I'm going to do is on the skeleton edit, change it from TRS to branch removal. And here the options are trim branch or remove branch. I'll keep it on the default trim branch. And really, if we take a look here, one of the problem ones is this guy. So this guy is a problem. So if I just click here, it'll just go ahead and remove this. And if I go back to the mesh builder, you can see, okay, well, that's still a problem. That main part was the problem. So maybe I'll undo that. And then I will just go ahead and reselect the skeleton edit because I undid it. It deselected it for whatever reason. Put it back in branch removal. And then let's remove this one and take a look. It's better. Let's remove this. Better. Again, the problem ones are these. Now you might be thinking, well, hold on, why don't you just select the point and scale it? Well, I would love to. The problem is there's no scale option here. I can move it. I mean, change the number of point selection back to 0 here. I can move the point. There's no issues here, but that's pretty much it. I can just move it. And yeah, that's a little bit better, but not really. So the best I got is to do branch removal and remove the points and then check, come back and maybe remove this point, check. No, still an issue. The main problem one is this. Yeah, you just got to keep removing these. And then once you do remove all those, right, that whole section's better. Now, does that mean you have to remove this entire thing? No, probably not. As we continue to remove a few more points, you can see here, there's a bunch of them, like in a weird, like circle. If I just click this point here using trim branch, it'll go ahead and remove all the ones after it, but keep the one you clicked on. So if I wanted to, I could keep that one point. Again, in this case, we have some issues. So most likely what I need to do is just remove a bunch of this. So if we remove those, right, still got the issue. Now I'm going to try removing kind of the excess ones that kind of like stick out here because maybe the problem is on those. No, seems like still have issues. Remove that. So you can see I'm basically just now removing these points all the way back here. Oh, there we go. So now once I remove once all the way back there, it's a little bit better. So it maybe doesn't like how long this branch is. Maybe a couple more removed. And you know what? That's a lot better. Now it's starting to feel like more of just like the main trunk. And so the problem area is gone. And don't worry about removing like way too many branches. We'll be adding them back in just a second. The main thing I want to do is just remove the problem area. And again, if I wanted to at this point, I can change it from branch removal to TRS. And then just go ahead and kind of, adjust this if I want to. And move these a little bit over, take a look, right? And, there you go. And by the way, if you're thinking like, oh, hold on a second. You've been moving this and it's really been snapping to the grid. That seems like way too big of a minimum distance here. Well, you might notice here, there is absolutely not a single snapping option here of any kind. That's because it is using, that's right, these options. So if I just toggle this off, the snapping here of 10, now if I come in here, I can move this up and down smoothly. It is not using any snapping of any kind. So just know the snapping controls are not in this window. It's using the one from the main viewport. Personally, I think those should also be available inside of the procedural vegetation display, since editing it like that is part of that setup, but it's not that big of a deal. But cool, okay, so we now have a better setup. Okay, well, you know what? I feel like we need more branches now. We removed a bunch. I kind of want to add some more back. Well, there's a node called grower, and there's a bunch of like grower subtypes or modifications. I'm using the regular grower here, and you can see here even when I have it just selected with nothing input into it, it goes ahead and grows the start of a little tree. And here under settings, I can change the growth cycles to be a little bit bigger, and look at that, we now have a tree. Now, real quick, I just want to point something out here. I just added this node, and this is all the settings we have. That's a lie. That is not all the settings we have. And I can't tell you how long it took me to realize that that wasn't all the settings we had. Because, for whatever reason, by default, you don't see all the settings. If you're wondering why, I hope 5.8 release will adjust that. I just do not know. There's a lot of things here I don't know. But that's why I'm here to show you guys so you do know and you don't struggle like I did when I first started this. So this is not all the settings, because you see here all the little sections here. And if you clicked all, oh, well, that's significantly more settings, isn't it? Well, would you look at that? Huh, well, you can really control a lot of things here. Yep, you can control a lot of stuff here. And by default, you don't see a single one of these. In fact, if I go through these and just select them one at a time, just go through all of them, none of these options are what you get when you just create the grower node. Now it's selecting collider because I had something selected from this one, I guess. So it remembered. So if I set it to all and now made a grower node, it has it on all. But you saw on the first one that I made, it wasn't any of these sections and only had the little bit there. So watch out for that. And I guess you're welcome. But like I was saying, you can use this to just start your own tree from nothing, which is super awesome, or you can use another tree as the base. I'll go ahead and just clear this up so we can just use a basic one, and I'll just move it and place it basically after the skeleton edit. I want to use a grower here. So this grower, I'll go ahead and plug all the way through. And now on this grower, we'll see a few things. And also I just realized, oh yeah, there's a few little guys down here that I want to get rid of. I completely missed this. Let's go back to quickly branch removal. I'll just click these to remove these weird points here. Those definitely do not need to exist there. And while I'm here, is there anything else that was super weird? Maybe get rid of this one. Oh, this one was really weird. Yeah, let's get rid of that point. All right, and look at it, just slightly clean it up a little bit. I don't like this one going backwards. That seems a lot better. So this is the skeleton edit. So let's go to the grower now. Now, grower, as you saw, has growth cycles. So we can say 3 growth cycles, 5 growth cycles, 10 growth cycles. So now we're getting a little bit more of these branches off of the main thing. So you can see here, now we're at 15, we have the original, and then we have things growing off of it. So it might actually be better to go ahead and remove all of these little ones and kind of just mainly keep the main kind of branch in some of these areas. So we don't have too many kind of little sub-branch ones, and have the sub-branches be taken care of by the other one. So go back to the grower here, right? We have this kind of tree. And while we're on this all, we can now even go down here and change some stuff around. For example, I can go down here to the axial parameters, and there's a random, so we can just drag this a little bit. You'll see it is now a little bit more random. We can modify things like the trunk growth. If we can go ahead and increase this quite a bit, you'll see it goes a little bit really high. Default is fine. We can just go, increase it maybe a little bit. You can see now each one of these is a bit longer, so it now has a little bit more swoop because of it. And if we go a little bit longer, right, you can see what happens. So there's so many controls here, and I'm not going to go through every single one of these. I just want to show that you can just now modify it and build on top of it. And then when you're happy with this, let's say this is what we want, right? We're using the original mesh, cleaned it up, removed any of the problem areas, went with a grower, and now if you go to the mesh builder, well, here we go. There's our tree. Is it the most beautiful tree you've ever seen? Probably not. But if you wanted to, after this grower, you could pick another skeleton edit and put it after this grower and edit it here at this point if you were just not happy, or if one of these again blew up on you and you had a massively large section again and you wanted to change it. Yeah, you cannot scale these points, so you can't make this root of this trunk just really thick and stylized. Hopefully they'll add point scaling controls down the line. Unfortunately, not right now. The actual thickness and size, I think, is more to do with the size of the branch versus the size of the point. So if you had a really long one, it will effectively make it bigger. So if I went to the skeleton edit here just really quick, And let's say I grabbed this. Oh, I'm still in the delete option. Let me change that to TRS. Selected U and just like really move this one way out and went all the way to the end here. Oh, but it seems like the grower kind of cut it off. Can I keep it if I moved it up? No, it seems grower just really wants to not have that be like that because it just is not happy with it. That's okay. The point is, right, is this one is the biggest kind of straight section it has. So I think that's why it is the way it is. Or I guess after the grower, this ends up being the biggest section. So that's why this is the thickest. And then if this one was even longer, it would be thicker. From what I can tell. I could be wrong, but I think right now that's just how it is as a base. But cool, we now have this mesh builder. Let's go ahead and assign a material to it. Well, up top here, we have material settings. We can change some things, but here we can add a generation material. So we'll go ahead and add one. I'll go ahead and apply one of my materials to it, and there we go. There's the little bark material that I just grabbed off of Fab here. And cool, and you can see it applies it to everything. Now, there are multiple slots, so you'll be able to customize this a little bit more. I haven't dived too far into it just yet, but I believe you're able to like tint the trunk versus the branches versus etc. This is the basic one. So I'm showing you how to set up the branches with the trunk all together. And then the leaves obviously will have its own material setup. But cool, we now have this trunk. And if you want to, by the way, you can just scale it here. So if I just change the scale of this, it goes ahead and actually adjusts it on this texture. You don't need to adjust the scaling of it in the actual material. The material is not changing. It is adjusted here, and I can do even offsets, rotations, randomness. So I could just adjust this a little bit and give it a little bit of variation. Now, as you can see, pushing the offset random way too high, right, will cause issues. But Art seems like that's just unhappy with all of this. There we go. Let's keep it at 0. It's fine at 0. We also could change it by age, by radius. There's a bunch of stuff here. Main thing is we now have a material. So now let's go ahead and take care of the leaves. Now, as I said before, I like these leaves. I want to use these leaves. If I press Alt-9, I can go into wireframe mode, and you'll see that they're pretty much fully modeled. Now, they were originally set to transparent, and that's why you're seeing a little bit of this. Well, this whole system is designed to be used with nanite, and nanite does not work with transparency, and it really should just be used with pure opaque. You can use it with masked, but for trees especially, save yourself the performance and just put the geo in. It is so much more performant using pure geo than it is using masked leaves. In this case, I've just made it opaque. You can't really tell. This is an example one. If I was doing this myself, I just probably just adjust the UVs so I don't have this issue or change the color here or something. The main thing is this is now set to be fully opaque. Nanite is enabled on it and we're good. But I want to grab this leaf and use it. So what you can do is just duplicate the static mesh in the content browser. I already have a leaf set up, but I'll call this something like leaf new. And this is just so because we're modifying this, I don't want to mess with the original. All you need to do is just drag it somewhere in the world. I'll just put it at origin for convenience. And now what we can do is change the selection mode to modeling. And now we can basically remove everything that we don't want. So we can go here under mesh, go to try select, give it a moment, depending on how dense this is. This might take longer or shorter. There we go. So this is now in select mode, and we can just zoom in here to one of these sections and figure out where is like a little leaf cluster that we want to use as our kind of branch for things. This one seems like pretty nice. You can see as I'm moving this around, there's this selection that's way too big. If I press the bracket keys, I can make it smaller, or you can just adjust the size here. And basically you just make it a little bit bigger, and then you just click and hold, and you'll see it will turn red. And basically what we want to do is just select all of these leaves, all of them here, try to get as many of them as I can. And what I want to do is not select much of this branch itself, although there's nothing stopping me from using it. I can have the branch as part of it. If I hold shift now, it'll go ahead and deselect it. So I'll just go ahead and hold shift kind of on these branches to remove some of the stuff. But once I'm done with that, once I've selected everything and I'm happy with the selection, I can go back to the modeling mode stuff here and do an invert, and then just press delete on my keyboard. And I'll go ahead and just delete everything. So now we're left with just this. Cool. So let's go ahead and hit accept. And now we just need to set the pivot point to be here. So we can go to Xform, edit pivot. And now we can see here is the little controller. And what I'm going to do is just basically move it to the start of the branch roughly. I'll go ahead and turn off snapping for this. And then we'll just kind of try to get it aligned. Something like this, honestly, is fine. Let's go ahead and accept. And now with it being there, I'm going to just reset the location and put it at origin. And now I'm going to rotate it into position. So what I want to do is just have this be straight up, just like so. I'll go ahead and rotate it around so that way it is kind of along this forward x-axis. So that is forward and is kind of along it. Why is it along it? I'll show you in a second, but basically, as long as you're rotating roughly here, it should be good. And when you're good, go to Bake Transform, make sure Bake Rotation is on, it should be by default, and hit Accept. And there we go. And if we take a look at the one I had made before, that's the one I had made before. So now I have two of them if I want to. Now, why am I doing it this way? Why is it facing this way? I'll show you. If we go back to the actual setup here for the vegetation, if I go ahead and right click, I can search for foliage, and there's a foliage palette. This is where you could put in your kind of leaves. If I go ahead and press plus here, we get a mesh. If I search for leaves, I can go to any one of these, select them, and then just look at them in the content browser. There's the leaves that come with the engine, and I'm going to grab it, drag it out. This one's a big leaf, but the main thing here is it is facing, as you see, along the X and forward is Y. Basically, it's hanging down towards the Y-axis, which is why X is now rotating it down. So that's why we're facing in the same way. I can get out of the smalling mode. Doesn't need to be here anymore, right? But the main thing is that's why. If we grabbed another one, same thing. You can use these, by the way. Nothing's stopping you from using the engine ones. If you want to, right? You can go ahead and use these. Even comes with a skeleton and skeleton mesh ones that I'll set up. But in my case, I want to be using these. So in my case, I'll go ahead and select the leaf that we made, and I'll add another one and plug in the second leaf that we made. And here, if we take a look, it's just giving us some information. It's not displaying them at all. That's okay. We just need the information of the leaves here, because now we can go ahead and combine the two. And you might have noticed when I search foliage, the two options we get are the palette, which is what we just used to select it, and the distributor. Well, I want to distribute the foliage on here. And it's as simple as taking the mesh builder, plugging into the in, and the foliage palette goes into the foliage. And then we have, I'll be honest, it's not the greatest of trees, but foliage is being distributed. Okay, so that's a start. But now we can go into here and adjust it. So it is using the hormone-based settings. So we can open a hormone, and you can change this to use the different ones, the parametric, for example. Again, I'm not going to go through every single one of these controls. There's tons of them. I recommend playing around with them. The first thing I want to do here is change the scale. It is way too small. So I can just increase the base scale here to be 3.0, and there we go. We now have bigger leaves. And one thing to notice here is it comes with the leaves already applied here. So all of the kind of leaf textures are gained from the original, but for the tree trunk itself, you do apply them in the mesh builder. Here we can also change kind of some randomness. So we can say, okay, scale from 1 to 1.5 randomly. And we can also adjust how many there are now, because honestly, there's not that much. And we can adjust that with the instant spacing. So if I drop this, let's say to around 0.2, you'll see we get a little bit more, right? If I increase this way higher, we get a far less. So if we want it to be a lot denser, we could drop this, I don't know, to 1.13. And there we go. We have a bunch more leaves here on this tree. That's looking a lot nicer. And by the way, if you're not happy with this setup here on this tree specifically, right? Maybe like looking at this now, like, this shape I just really don't like it. You can go back to the grower here and then just search for seed. And there's a random seed, and you just randomize the seed a bit. And you'll see that, there we go. It is now changing the actual shape here. And we can go back to the foliage distributor, and that's the new tree. So there you go. So if we weren't happy with kind of that distribution of it, we can just adjust it, and that's the new one. Again, we can just go back here if we don't like it, play around with it some more, figure out one we like. And this one doesn't have too much there, right? And the main thing is we have a lot of kind of control here to find one that, we're happy with. So there's like a tree, for example. It's not the one you were looking at the beginning, but that's the beauty of it. Each time we can make a slightly different one. I've gone ahead and also increased the growers cycles to be a little bit higher. And let's say I'm happy with this tree. This is basically the basic from an import all the way to a distributor. And again, this skeleton importer, skeleton edit isn't even needed. I could just detach this and just use this. And there's our tree purely from the grower settings into mesh builder and here. But this way we get to use the original one as kind of our base shape if we really liked the original shape. I plugged it in and it needs a moment to kind of refresh. Deselect it. There we go. I clicked away, it refreshed it. Right. So we have a very different tree than we would have just with the grower. Although again, play with it enough, you'll get the same result. It just might be easier to use a definite base. Just keep in mind that that import, this part right here, is not randomized. So whatever you have here is not being randomized. Only the grower stuff is. So if you're looking for different like full trunks, this might not be the setup for you. But if you want very specific trunk setups, or if you want it to always specifically split into two in a specific way or something like that, maybe you use kind of a base, or you just use a grower and just edit the skeleton. A lot of options here. But awesome, we now have this tree. Let's go ahead and get it exported. So from here, I just drag out and search for export. So here we have a few things. Warning, enable nanite foliage in the project settings to enable support for nanite assemblies. This is important. Open project settings, search nanite foliage, and turn on nanite foliage experimental. Turn that on. And after this is turned on, it's there for both settings. You can see here, voxels are not enabled in the project, and therefore the supported mesh will not render as voxels. Enable nanite foliage in the project settings. So both of these require nanite foliage to be enabled. So I've turned it on, and go ahead and restart now. Make sure you save anything you need to. In my case, I'll just save the branch that we did and restart. You can, of course, do this at the very beginning when you turn on the actual plugin, so all of this can be done at once. But I want to show that it does tell you that it is required. So even if you were to forget, the warning is there. And then after a restart, it'll go ahead and regenerate the tree. There it is. And all our warnings are gone. So let's go ahead and figure out where we want to put it. Game procedural vegetation is fine. Honestly, I'll probably make a new folder for it. I'll make a new folder called exported trees, let's say. And now I just hit the three dots and select the exported trees folder. The mesh name, I'll rename it to something basic tree. The replace policy, replace is fine. I want it to be a skeletal mesh. I want it to be nanite foliage. I want to use the new voxelize method. Collision generation is an interesting one because we can say no collisions for this tree, or we can tell it to only put collisions on the trunk. And I like that. It will just put it on the trunk, which on a tree, in most cases, all you really need. Now, theoretically, you can get away a lot of times with just using a cylinder collision just where the trunk is yourself, but this will just pre-generate it. Nothing stopping you from customizing it after. Nice thing is, it doesn't just generate it on everything, which I appreciate. And the last one here is the wind settings. Now, I'll go ahead and use the default right now, but we will get back to this in just a moment. So one thing you might know is there's no export button here. We just have this. Well, the export is actually all the way up here. Here we can click export, and now you'll see all of these selected ones, or you do just all of them. So there's their basic tree export one, because you can have multiple exports and only do a few of them. There's all the settings for it. And here you can make any last minute changes. Then go ahead and hit an export, and it'll go ahead and exporting basic tree. Oh, we have a few errors here, but still going. Mesh export completed. And there's our three files. So it went ahead and exported it, despite having some errors. It's preview. I'm forgiving any errors or any crashes or anything like that. And I'm not going to go too far and investigate something that hopefully will just be fixed for the full release of 5.8. But cool, we now have this. Let's go ahead and make it so we can bring it into the world. For that, I'll just right click and grab ourselves a blueprint class, type actor. I'll call it BP underscore basic tree, and I'll put it actually in the folder above in the procedural vegetation folder here. I'll open it up, and here we need a few things, starting with the instant skinned mesh. That is the type of thing that the tree is. It is an instant skinned mesh. And then when we have it selected, we can go here under skeleton asset under mesh here, open it up, and we have the skeletal mesh to select. And if I just, from the drop down, in my case, it is right on the top because alphabetical. I go ahead and select it. You will not see it just yet. We also need to provide it a transform provider, and we can just use the default wind transform provider. Now, again, still nothing. Why? It is an instance, so it is like an instance static mesh. It needs to have an instance to display. So if I just search for instance here, all the way at the bottom here, we have instances. We can hit plus here, and we'll add one of the instances of the tree. And there we go. There's our tree. So I compile, save, and now I can just take this BP and just drag it out into the world, and there's our tree. And one thing you will immediately might notice for this tree is it's moving, it's great, but man, does it look weird with the movement, doesn't it? That is way too much movement. I feel like that tree should not be moving the way it is, considering its size. Well, remember how I was saying we'll go back to this wind settings one? Now's the time. What I'm going to do is just click this browse to, so you can find it in the content browser here. I'll just go ahead and scroll up. I'll just drag this onto the procedural vegetation folder, and I'll just do a copy here. And then in my copy, I'll just, instead of saying default, I'll say custom. So it is my custom tree wind settings. I'll double click it, and we can get it open. And here you'll see we have a few settings here. Index 012, whether it is a trunk, how much influence it has, etc. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I know everything this means, but what I can show you is the settings that work for me to get you something similar to what you just saw at the very beginning of the video. I'm going to turn on override existing. So if there's any settings, I want to override them. I'm going to say the influence of the trunk is 0. And my only guess here, by the way, is this is trunk, this is branch, and this is leaves. I'm going to say the branches are a trunk as well, so they don't move as crazily. And I'm going to leave it at that. 0 on the, what I assume is trunk. Make the branches seem like a trunk, so I feel like they are influenced a little bit differently, and the actual leaves would be fine. So with this all in here, I'll go ahead and save it and go back to here. We can now plug it in for the wind settings for a custom one. Now, this is very important. When you do this, before you export, do not have the tree loaded in the world at the very least. If I was to export it, and this tree is here, and then I was to touch this tree, Unreal would just crash. So at the very least, let's go ahead and get rid of this tree, or we can just go and just make a new level entirely and just make sure there's no history of it here. Then go back in here, re-export, and you'll see here the custom tree settings are there. Hit export. Yes, these will be overwritten. Confirm. It is now re-exporting it. Mesh, it has exported successfully. No errors this time. And now, if we come here, we can just drag this basic tree out, and unfortunately still a crash. So, most likely, export, save, restart Unreal, maybe even. Again, it's a preview, it's fine, I'm letting it slide. This time around, I'm just gonna export it as a new tree instead of overwriting the old one. So let's rename it to Basic Tree V2, hit export, export it out as a new one. Once it's done, I'll go back to the Blueprint Actor, and here, select the Instant Skin Mesh, and change it to the V2 model, and there we go, there it is. For whatever reason, when I re-exported the first one, it came without leaves. I'm not gonna question it, again, there's some issues, but instead of overwriting, just export a new one and delete the old one, it seems. For now, it seems that is the solution. We'll go ahead and save this one. And now if I take this actor and drag it out, you'll see here, there's our tree, and it is no longer blowing crazily in the wind. It still has some like overall like cluster type movement from the wind, but it's just not that crazy amount of movement that we had before, where it felt like way over the top. Obviously, you can still control it. Just make sure that when you go ahead and re-export, you could try to overwrite it and close Unreal and do all that, or try to do a new one for the time being. The main thing is, though, we have now gone from this tree to this one with full movement and a lot of control, honestly. And if we wanted to, we can go further from there. The main thing is basically we use this one as the seed, the inspiration for this one. So you can see here, this main branch, right, is still going in this direction. And that is kind of what's happening here. Obviously, it's a little bit different. We've customized this a bit more, but I just want to show that you can do this. And overall, hopefully this shows you that this whole process is not complicated. It's surprisingly simple. It was complicated in the past version because we didn't have the growers. But with the grower now, it is very simple to do. Now, that doesn't mean this is not going to replace everything. But if you're looking for more realistic type games, maybe, more AAA style, high quality games in that regard versus like low poly ones, this is probably going to be your go-to method. The performance remains to be seen. It is right now a preview and experimental. I'm not going to judge the performance of this, but I imagine if you're somewhere where you don't need this level of fidelity, then I can see just a bunch of regular static meshes with some world position offset will be just fine for you. This is not for everyone, but it's still good. Nevertheless, I hope this has kind of shown you kind of the basics of creating trees using this system. There's a lot more to cover, including spawning all of this automatically with PCG. So if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments below. But as always, the project files for this will be available on my Patreon, where you can join these wonderful people here in supporting what I do. It really means a lot. And if you'd like to join the community, the link to the Discord and everything is down in the description below, as always. And if you want to know about the other 5.8 feature that's coming out, that's procedural, I recommend checking out this video right here, because I'm really excited about it.